It started quietly, too quietly, on August 6, 2025. Within a sterile lab, what initially seemed to be a faint light turned out to be one of the most unnerving discoveries of contemporary science. The James Webb Space Telescope, the world's most sophisticated observatory, abruptly activated in emergency override mode. This wasn't triggered by a far-off supernova or collapsing black hole, but something eerily near, a comet, or at least a comet-like thing. The object was christened 3I Atlas, first written off as another interstellar wanderer, cold, lifeless, and uneventful. But the moment the sensors of Webb latched onto it, the data coming in spoke otherwise. The chemical reading was something never seen before. Ratios between components were grotesquely distorted, compositions were not matched, and its motion defied all models of nature. When streams of numbers began to appear, a quiet terror started spreading among astrophysicists. What if this was not a comet? What if this was something manufactured? The first red flag had shown up in the coma, the radiant shroud of gas around the object's nucleus. At 6 astronomical units from the Sun, a comet must remain frozen and quiescent. The sunlight there is too weak by far to produce substantial outgassing. But 3I Atlas was spectacularly active. Webb found spectral lines not controlled by water vapor, as they should have been, but by carbon dioxide, 8 times more prevalent than water. The ratio was 8-to-1, whereas normal comets hardly made it to 0.7, and even the most recent interstellar interloper, Borisov, only displayed around 0.5. That was unheard of. It seemed like the object was designed to release CO2 in situations where nature was supposed to stop it. Weirder, the coma was wafer-thin and ethereal. There was hardly any dust, no solid particles, none of the typical turbulent trash, only smooth, controlled, highly discriminative emissions. The chemistry indicated not natural origin but a process designed for precision. As Webb peered deeper, things became increasingly disquieting. Its instruments picked up intense, recurring nickel spectral lines over ultraviolet and near-infrared wavelengths. These weren't trace anomalies, they were regular, focused, and real. At 3.8 AU, emissions registered over 10 superscript 2 superscript 1 atoms per second. By 2.85 AU, the levels were up an entire order of magnitude. The actual shock wasn't that there was nickel, it was that there wasn't iron. From Webb to the Very Large Telescope to Gemini, not one whisper of iron was found. That was not possible. In every natural meteorite or comet ever analyzed, iron and nickel are attached partners, nearly always in a proportion of 1 part nickel to 15 parts iron. But 3I Atlas broke that rule. Nickel dominated iron by more than 40-to-1. No natural process can produce such an unmixing. In the lab, it takes huge amounts of energy, industrial equipment, and intentional planning. But here was an object moving quietly through space, executing that separation with ease, or at least, maybe not even with ease. Prior to scientists being able to fully crack its chemistry, the Pan-STARRS network saw something more. The object was speeding up, but not like a comet would. Solar heat, at its distance, was too faint, and sublimation jets couldn't explain the momentum Webb captured. In only 72 hours, the velocity of the body had risen by 0.12 m/s superscript 2. To an untrained ear, that's minuscule, but for a mass 11 kilometers wide, the width of a city, it was enormous. Picture a cruise liner speeding through an utterly tranquil ocean with no engines on board. Even scarier, the acceleration was not smooth. Observers interpreted micro-jumps and spurts of jittery bursts on top of its overall trajectory as if something within was cycling on and off at consistent intervals. Attempts at explaining it as fractured crusts, incidental outgassing, or solar winds all faltered. None contained the rhythm. Because there was a rhythm. 3I Atlas flared steadily and on schedule, every 7.2 hours, like a revolving lighthouse beam. Natural rubbish bounces haphazardly. This was clockwork. A few thought maybe reflective sheets or an empty spinning frame, but one reality became inevitable: this wasn't acting like a rock. This was moving with accuracy. Science itself started to quake under the burden of this revelation. When all natural cause, sublimation, chance, chaotic form had been ruled out, there was only one alternative left. 3I Atlas was constructed, whether a piece of wreckage, part of a derelict ship, or an operational probe from some dead civilization, no one knew. The darker dread persisted: what if it wasn't dead? What if this was a system still operating, still reacting, still observing? An organization not controlled by happenstance but by intent. Since no comet ought to awaken so distant from the sun, vent nickel without iron, speed up without fuel, or rotate with mechanical beat. And yet, it did all of these in open sight of our best instruments, taking no pains to hide. The James Webb override wasn't a technical precaution merely. It was, fundamentally, a whisper of alarm, a general recognition among scientists that something drastically out of the ordinary was happening. Maybe, for the first time ever, we were looking directly at extraterrestrial machinery. Accelerations alone polarized the scientific community, but then came the light curve. Photometric measurements from Gemini South and the TESS Space Telescope showed periodic brightening every 7.2 hours, matching precisely with the object's acceleration pulses. Ordinarily, asteroids and comets become brighter in irregular flickers, their jagged surfaces reflecting sunlight in a haphazard manner as they rotate. But not this. Spikes of 3I Atlas were precise, clean, and consistent. No hysterical fade, no spurious noise, only a beacon flashing on and off like a machine metronome. Even with escalating gas emissions and acceleration of the object, this rhythm never deviated. It was too uniform to be incidental sunlight reflection. Some speculated on a solar sail, a mirror-shaped panel absorbing radiation, accounting for both flashing and thrust. Others suggested a rotating platform with flat panels. Whatever the theory, everyone concluded, this motion wasn't anything on Earth. This wasn't spin. This was signal. With each pulse, it seemed to whisper the same phrase into the emptiness: I am not what you think I am. The transition from anomaly to alarm was on August 6 at 2:11 GMT. Ground-based observatories issued emergency warnings to Webb's control center, reading onrushing CO2 emissions, metallic spectral spikes, and velocity curves that broke the laws of gravity. A minute or so later, the emergency override protocol kicked in, a procedure so extraordinary that it had only been implemented a few times in Webb's past, and not before for an interstellar object. The choice cut over committees and budget, straight onto the project scientist's desk. Unanimity was needed for approval. It was given. Webb turned at 2:17 GMT, reoriented, and locked its NIR-spec instrument on 3I Atlas. The initial packets of data told the unthinkable. Rather than the frosty fingerprint of a comet, spectra showed chemistry so extreme, so volatile with carbon compounds, that all known solar system bodies appeared tame by comparison. This was not only a scientific adjustment. It was an unseen alarm. Mankind's most powerful telescope had interrupted its cosmic quest to pursue something that acted like a machine. From that point on, every new set of data simply widened the borders further, shattering every natural explanation. The chemistry, the nickel-iron division, the mechanical cadence, the navigational accuracy, it all led away from geology and toward engineering. And the more deepening mystery led to another question gaining hold: if this was a machine, then it had a function. What was it designed to do? To observe? To communicate? To seed? Or worse, ***, to awaken something else ***.